And I
Recording in progress.
will accept a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes, I would have sent a letter or an email.
All right. Forgetting I need a motion to resume.
We can call it back in just a second.
Okay. I'd like to take a motion to call this meeting back into session.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor? Good. Okay. Minutes, item 3, approval of minutes from December 6, 2021 meeting.
Move approval.
Second?
All in favor? Approval of minutes from December 2021 meeting.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, appointments.
Oh, I should abstain from one of those because I wasn't here.
That would be the second one. the
Second.
20.
Sorry.
Yeah. 401.
Appointments, recognitions, and resignations. Request appointment of Rosemary Matchek to the warrant committee.
Would move appointment with many thanks.
Second.
All in favor? Awesome, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Yep, a request appointment of David Dutton to Shellfish Committee.
So I had a question about
Yeah.
that.
Sure,
He's not a resident of Mount Desert.
that is correct.
So that just that struck me as
There is
unusual, or is it?
nothing in the warrant or, in the ordinance or the charter that says he has to be a resident.
Okay.
He attends every meeting. I think they just felt that, with the numbers dwindling on the committee, people aging out and stuff, that it would be good to have him on the board or the committee, because he's always there for one thing, and for another thing, sometimes we get close to not having a quorum to hold the meeting.
Sure.
So he can vote even though he's not a resident?
Yep.
That's true, yes, he is a commercial license holder,
Okay,
and so all of the
so that
committee
qualifies
members,
it.
yeah.
And there's no, again, I don't have any objection to the person or any of this. I just want to make sure, and he's also on the Shellfish Committee in the town of Bar Harbor.
Yes.
Would it be possible at some point for us to have one committee for both towns? If they can cross-pollinate like that?
They have had discussions in the past about sharing things like wardens and stuff like that, so it's possible that the committees, like for the whole island, might want to eventually get together and just make it one.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And from his application, it sounds like, is our Shellfish Committee, do they have difficulty getting a quorum and attendance? Okay.
Yeah, like last meeting, we haven't had one since 2019,
Oh, wow.
May of 2019,
Okay.
because of COVID. Most of them aren't savvy enough to do Zoom, and they weren't comfortable to meet in person. So like, even the meeting I had last week, I didn't think I was gonna get the quorum because I only had 2 committee
Yeah.
members. Finally, the third one popped in, but.
Or maybe they're just smart enough to say, yeah, I can't do Zoom.
But anyways, yeah, so that was a good example that I might not have had
Okay.
a quorum to do the meeting.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second.
Not yet.
Not yet?
Oh,
Okay.
second.
Second?
What was the motion? Sorry.
I'll make a motion.
Okay. All in favor? Great, thanks. Okay, consent agenda. Department reports, Public Works, December 2021. Thank you notes from the Brown family, Jen and Don Brandt. Audit Code project meeting notes, December 17, 2021. Standard monthly required notice of municipal solid waste bypassing coastal resources of Maine to PERC. And Hancock County Commissioners meeting minutes from December 21, 2021.
I move acceptance of that agenda in its entirety.
Second?
Good, any discussions? All in favor? Thank you. Okay, now, why don't we take, do we have anything for Tony first? We'll do that.
Yeah, you can do Tony, so you can.
Okay, where is Tony on this?
He would be under new business,
Okay, Tony, are you there?
item C.
Yes, I am, John. Thank you.
Why don't we do 7C, or 8C, sorry.
I appreciate that.
Yep,
Been a long 2 weeks.
Sounds like it.
Man,
Were we just going through and asking whatever questions?
Yep.
Tony, this is Jeff here. I just,
Jeff.
a couple of that, I'm sure, I think I know the answer to, but some of the early, on the first page, the equipment operator, you have 204,000, is that 4 people? It doesn't say how many
Yes.
people.
it
Okay,
is
so that's
4.
4 people, and then the heavy equipment operator is 1 person,
Yes,
and then you have two mechanics.
yes,
Okay, that's what I figured, because they were all in that ballpark. Thank you.
you're welcome.
And then the same question in the wastewater operations, line 172 for assistant operator, is that 3 people, or is that,
Yes,
what is it?
3 people, yes.
Okay. I had a,
Go ahead.
sorry, down on line 197, the health insurance went up by 19.5% in the wastewater. And I didn't understand why that would be. Did you have some change in what people were opting for? Or?
That's the Derlin question. Derlin handles the benefits.
Okay.
I do the O&M.
Yeah, I can check on that, but I think that there was a change in status of insurance.
Because most of them went up by the basic
Yeah.
3 or 4%.
You get a change in status.
But that's, okay, so somebody was not accessing the insurance and now is, or changed from individual to a family or something like that.
That would be about the difference would be from the single to a family.
Okay. Did anybody else pick up on the fact that electricity went up by 30 to
Yes. I know.
40% in
Yeah,
every
yeah.
department?
Yeah.
Tony, is that is it the delivery charge for everyone that's going up with Versant?
It's the supply charge.
Okay.
Ed Montague, wastewater superintendent, contacted Versant, and the lady went right down through it with him and suggested looking at one of the invoices and adding 89% to the supply portion. So Ed went through 2021's invoices, all 12 for the 3 treatment plants and for the pump stations, and that's where those numbers came from.
Wow.
That's the biggest eye catcher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh,
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, it is.
It was 35, 40+%.
yeah.
All over the map.
I do have one question. Line 661, just everything else is spelled out in such detail, from chlorine costs and everything to, and just environmental sustainability.
Yeah,
Can you just, go over what sorts of things that would potentially cover?
or what we've added,
Oh, wait, I got it.
Well,
Oh,
Tony, I think you're muted.
You
just-
muted,
you
you
muted
got
yourself
muted.
inadvertently.
thank you, sometime. We increased the energy audit services. Those are building energy audits by $7,500. That's line 646. We're in the process now with a company doing an energy audit of the highway garage. We wanted just to ease into this and see, one, how good this company was at their job, and what a total cost would end up being for the highway garage. So there's that, Matt. Then I added in for a second EV charger. That line in 22 had been 10,750. Bumped that up to $12,000. And on such small numbers, the percentages look
Right.
really exaggerated. But that's planning, when we get, you'll see on our wastewater truck, we sent, this is getting back to this sustainability, environmental sustainability. Let me see to be exact. We contacted 9 dealers for this wastewater truck, asking for bids on gasoline, electric, and hybrid. We received 2 bids. One was non-responsive. There was absolutely no contact information on the bid, no return address, nothing on the inside, a header, absolutely nothing. So, but then the one bid that we did get was a gasoline truck. And
Right.
the hybrid trucks, EV electric trucks they're in the works. They're just not out there yet and heavy enough to do.
Size
Yeah, that's right.
of that
In that
35
size.
a few years, but
And-
I guess that's sort of my question, because now that we're sort of talking electric vehicles, as some of our vehicles come up for replacement, I just want to make sure that we factor in, the cost of, we need a way to charge them, and
Yes,
likely, probably like when we go fully electric, like a level 3 type
Yeah,
thing, which is not
that's right.
inexpensive.
That's right.
but yes, Matt, you're exactly right. And if we had been able to get some form of an electric vehicle, then we could have drawn for another charger for highway right out of that line. And Ben Jacobs, Highway Superintendent Jacobs, has been keeping his eye out on dump trucks and Packer trucks, and they're still a ways away. There's just, it's not, you can't just put an electric motor in place of a diesel.
Not a big market for those vehicles either, so the manufacturers are going to be slow on those.
I
Well,
think
this was that truck that was crumbling underneath the floorboards, right? So there's no waiting for, yeah.
Yeah, and it is in conformance with the CIP, and 10 years, it's we got our money's worth. And we got $10,000 for, or $9,000 on the trade, and $5,000 on the Ford Ranger.
Okay, so now that we've fleshed out all the details for item B, why don't we just vote on item B?
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Well, I would,
Okay.
I would move that we approve the purchase of the 2022 GMC Sierra as it's described.
Second.
all in favor? Good.
Thank
Okay.
you.
There we go, Tony. Good
If,
luck with your fuel tank. Sounds like a
thank
nice-
you. If, as always, if anyone has any questions about the budget, feel free to give me a call,
Okay.
email. All right, thank you, folks.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Tony.
Tony.
Good night.
Okay, now I'd like to go back up to number 7, unfinished business, item B.
Selectmen's reports?
No, I gotta get Johanna in
Oh,
here
okay.
first. Yeah. Okay, so Johanna, are you ready for your 5 minutes?
I'm ready. And I have
Okay.
Naomi here as well. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And so we gave you guys all the handout, and John had asked me to prepare just a really brief presentation to walk through what was included in that handout. So I'm going to go ahead and get this started. And so this is just an outline in preparation for handing over the full plan in another couple of weeks. We wanted to give you guys something to chew on in between now and then. And you'll notice at the top of the outline, we pulled out some priorities that we were holding in mind as we went through the whole process of developing the plan. And these priorities are important to consider as we look through the outline and as the plan is handed over in a couple of weeks. So we obviously wanted the plan to be very useful, highly useful to the town, to anybody who is working to implement it. We wanted it to provide meaningful guidance. So not just telling the town what to do, but also telling it how to do it. And where it might look for funding and other avenues of support. And we also, again, to speak of support, wanted support for the actual process of implementation. So this is delivered in the context of resources for the different action items that are included, potential funding sources, and other avenues of guidance. And then, of course, it's a living document. So we've included within the plan avenues for reviewing it and updating it as the plan is implemented. The plan is divided into three main sections. Part one, which is about 11 pages, is an executive summary. And this is the part of the plan that I think most people will interact with. It gives an overview. It looks at, why the plan is including what it's including, why different actions are prioritized. And then part two, where it gets into the actual action items, is much more lengthy. And that will really only be used by people who are implementing the plan. So for each action item, it's about a page because it has a bunch of resources that implementers will be able to use to guide and support implementation. So part one is, the read through, the overview. People reading just part one will have a really in-depth understanding, but then part two is that usability and guidance and support for implementation. And then the appendix will have the declaration of climate emergency. It'll have some tables where the actions are prioritized in different ways, so for easy reference, and a few other resources that are kind of like plan-wide. So I'm going to turn it over to Naomi to walk you guys through the next few slides, as she has been the one who's been most hands-on with the plan.
Thanks, Johanna. So as Johanna mentioned, the executive summary will really serve as a synthesis of the key elements of the plan. And it would contain an introduction. We're hoping that it will also contain a letter from the select board to Mountain Desert residents regarding the need for and purpose of the plan. It would also include background information. So again, referencing back to the climate emergency declaration and how the plan has evolved from that declaration, and also explaining the difference between net zero and zero carbon targets. So net zero meaning reducing emissions to as close to zero as possible, and then offsetting remaining emissions through carbon sequestration, versus real zero, reducing actual physical greenhouse gas emissions to zero. So explaining the importance of between the difference of between those two concepts, net zero and real zero, and putting an emphasis on the need to get as close to real zero as possible. The plan will also include an overview of key sources of greenhouse gas emissions in the state of Maine, because that can help us infer where priorities should be locally before we have a local greenhouse gas inventory to really hone in on our local emissions. We'll also take a look at just high-level economic impacts of implementing the actions. So additionally, it will include an overview of the process, and it includes a recommendation to develop the plan in 2 phases. And this iteration would be version 1 of, it would be phase 1 essentially. And phase 1, the goal would be to outline a strategic approach and detail strategies for the next 2 to 3 years, and really provide a framework for future actions based on the best available information we have currently. And this would be leading into phase 2, which would update the plan to incorporate a local greenhouse gas inventory and reassess top priorities based upon that, the findings of that inventory, and then really hone in on actions for 2025 through 2030. And the plan also contains concrete goals to really achieve the vision of the emergency declaration. So you can read the goals here. The first goal being that based on the town greenhouse gas inventory, establish a goal for true carbon reductions by 2030 that exceeds the ambition of the global timeline for maintaining warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius. And the reason we use this language is really to establish a clear science-based target for real emissions reductions. And the first thing you'll notice is that this goal would be based upon a local town-specific greenhouse gas inventory, which would be used to determine what level of emissions reductions are really feasible between now and 2030, and really hone in on those that are feasible. And then you can also see that we're referring to true carbon reductions. So again, that would be a physical reduction in the volume of carbon dioxide we emit versus offsetting. And the goal also mentions 1.5 degrees Celsius, and I'm sure that you're familiar with that number. It's the number that the Paris Agreement aims to limit global warming to under. And this has also been identified as the threshold for really limiting some of the worst impacts of climate change and preventing some cascading effects. And then we also reference a global timeline for maintaining warming below 1.5 degrees. And so the IPCC, which is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, is the UN body that assesses the scientific literature on climate change, is really the internationally recognized body for this work. And they assess global timeline of emission reductions that will be necessary to prevent certain thresholds like 1.5. And so we'd be looking to the timelines that they from their studies. And here we also say exceeding ambition of the global timeline, because the IPCC's emission scenarios would give us a 50 to 66% chance of keeping warming below that 1.5 degree threshold. And those odds leave some uncertainty. So by exceeding this global timeline, we improve our odds of remaining below 1.5 degrees. So then, as you can see, the other goals are to review the true emissions goal annually and continue to set more ambitious targets whenever possible due to the emerging technologies. And then also to offset remaining emissions through investment in meaningful carbon sequestration projects to really meet net zero emissions by 2030. So in the executive summary, we'll also outline successes to date to see where the town has come and the roles of both town staff, a recommendation for a climate action plan task force to implement the plan, and also a recommendation for a sustainability coordinator position, and then the roles of the community. The plan will also include a pathway to zero section, and this would essentially be outlining the strategies or the key strategies and priorities that would get the town as close to zero emissions as possible. And this will be organized in key action areas, and you can see those there on the screen: transportation, buildings, energy, waste and water, sequestration and natural solutions, adaptation and resilience, governance, and then monitoring progress and updates. And then actions will also be divided by their fiscal year, so we'll include both near and midterm actions.
There's a difference between the action areas that are in this executive summary section, and they're prioritized as they are with transportation, buildings, and energy up front, because those are the key admission areas. And so the town can receive kind of the biggest bang for the buck by addressing those first. And then the rest of the plan after the executive summary dives into action items that are categorized by those action areas. But these are specific items like conduct a greenhouse gas inventory of the town, or establish electric vehicle charging stations on town property. And each action item includes a description of what that action item is, an identification of ideal fiscal years or years, the responsible parties for implementing the action, budget implications and possible sources of funding wherever possible. Some of that will kind of be pending because some of the recommended action items are for the more distant future. For example, some of the things we were talking about just earlier about electric vehicles, encouraging the town to wait until they're more affordable, for example. And then resources, which might be examples from other towns, programs that exist that could help the town with the implementation, incentives that exist, et cetera. And so that's where the plan, there's a whole bulk of action items, and those are, again, for those actually implementing the plan, as opposed to the executive summary, which gives that overview of the whole plan and the trajectory as a whole. This is just a formatted, this was in the packet that you guys received as well, but this is a formatted action items. This is, what they're going to look like in the plan, all formatted. You can see those different areas of the description: fiscal years, responsible parties, budget impact, scope, resources, and examples of this type of action.
Great.
And that's it.
Okay, quick question. Are you guys going to be ready to give us the full presentation next Monday by any chance?
No.
Okay.
No, we were asked to have the plan ready for February 2nd, and so it will be ready then.
Okay.
We set another meeting.
Yeah, we'll have to set up another meeting. That's fine. That's good.
I'd love it if
All
we were
right.
ready next Monday. It'd be helpful for us too, but not
Okay.
great.
No, there was a slot there and I thought we could take advantage of it, but that's all right.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Johanna. Thank you, Naomi.
Great, thank you all.
Thanks.
All right, let's see.
24th. is that-
Any selectmen's reports?
Oh, I have one. Matt and I were both at the Economic Development Committee meeting, and there was some talk of, there was a comment made that there was a worry about having lead pipes in some of the downtown buildings, and Derlin is going to write a letter to the
I've
water company.
contacted the water company.
Yeah.
I haven't heard back from them.
Yeah,
I did contact them, and I think my question was, because it's my understanding that this is just a problem on private property. I
right.
just wanted
It's
to,
unclear.
I
Yeah.
just wanted to double check, it says, we wanted to make sure that that did not include infrastructure from the water company going into the buildings. So I don't think shouldn't take too long to get that response back, but that is my understanding, it is not a infrastructure problem with the company, it's the buildings that they serve, but I will clarify that. Yep,
Thank you.
yep, already got it.
All right. Anything else from anyone? Nope. Unfinished business, consideration of Casco Bay Advisors proposal. Okay,
She is, yeah. Or should be. Yes, she was.
there's
Kathy,
Kathy, there she is.
She's here,
She's muted.
Hi, Brian.
Good
Here I
evening.
am.
Hi, Kathy.
Hello, sorry about that. Do you want me to introduce this? So
Yeah.
the broadband committee had been doing some work for quite a while and realized that we need quite a bit more data and we need some professionals to provide us with that information. And so we reached out to Brian Lippold of Casco Bay Advisors, which has done other work for the town, most recently in the connection between the police departments from Mount Desert and Bar Harbor, so they can have a communications path between them. And so we had asked Brian for a proposal. He has provided us this proposal. It is addressed to me only because it's for the town of Mount Desert. It's addressed to me because I'm the secretary of the broadband committee and I only use my work email because I don't pay attention to my personal email very much. So, but this is a proposal to the whole town. And so we would like to have Brian present what the plan is and why this is so critical. And it is our understanding from Derlin that we have the funds available to pay the fee involved with this. So that I'd like to turn it over to Brian.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Thanks for having me on this evening. So this is a process that we've gone through with, over 150 towns now in the state of Maine, where we examine the existing broadband infrastructure in the town by doing a field audit. And we drive every roadway, every long driveway to identify where there is existing fiber optic assets and where there is existing cable TV infrastructure, which is typically the highest speed asset that a community has in terms of broadband. So after we perform the field audit, we bring that back in-house and enter all of that information into our GIS system that allows us to classify each road segment and identify all of the potential subscriber locations and associate those locations with the different types of broadband assets. Once we have all of that data in the GIS system, then we're able to easily extract the data, look at the miles of roadway that would need to be cabled to either extend the cable TV infrastructure, understand exactly how many potential subscriber locations there are that are currently served by cable TV, and those that are not served by cable TV or fiber assets, and then be able to determine what would the cost be to either extend cable TV infrastructure or build a fiber to the home system townwide. So once we have that data assembled, we're able to pretty accurately forecast what the cost would be. Once that report is assembled, then the data is in a format that can be shared with all of the service providers in the state of Maine to see who might be interested in building out network to fill those gaps. And also it's in a manner that's suitable for accompanying a grant application to secure state or federal funds for the areas that would be eligible for grants. It's a pretty routine process, takes about 6 to 8 weeks to complete. And at the end of the process, you'll have a report that clearly identifies what's available where the gaps are, and you'll have the underlying GIS data to share with service providers to take the next step. The cost for this project is $9,800 for the town of Mount Desert. We also included the cost to do the entire island if the other towns want to join in, and the cost for the entire island would be $22,000, where the cost would be split amongst the 4 municipalities in a manner however you chose to split that up. But for tonight, I think we're just talking about for the town of Mount Desert and getting approval to get started. So questions?
Brian, I have a question. This is John. You've mentioned in here that you've made inroads with the county administrator.
Yeah, that was in their minutes.
And the county is looking into doing a countywide study. Is there a
Yes.
reason we shouldn't wait for that, or?
This was a proposal that we put together back in August. And at that time, the county had an RFP out, and they selected a company by the name of Mission Broadband to perform their study. Their study does not include the level of detail that we perform. So they don't go out and audit, and they don't provide the data in the manner that you need to really engage the service providers at the level of detail that they're looking for to ingest that information into their financial modeling and their engineering systems. So this is a much more detailed approach than what the county is engaged in currently.
Okay.
Brian?
Yep.
Have you talked to the other towns on the island? Is there interest from them in doing an island-wide survey?
I have not. I spoke briefly with my contact at Bar Harbor last week to see if they had been approached by the town. They had not. I explained the process, and it's something that they are really going to want to do, I believe, but they haven't made any steps to move forward in that direction. I've not spoken with the other 2 towns. It's just for Mount Desert at this point.
We did bring that up in a League of Towns meeting back
In the summer.
early summer, and
Mhm.
Trenton had some interest, I remember at the time, in Bar Harbor, but the 2 other towns on the island did not have any interest.
Well, it seems to me that it's something we need to do, because there is going to be some money available, and we want to have our ducks in a row so we're ready to apply for any grants that become available. And I believe there's money in the budget for a consultant for this year,
Yes.
so we could cover it.
And we even
within our
carried a
budget.
little bit over.
Yeah.
So
We carried enough over, so
forward
we
on
could
our
be
own.
enough to do it.
They
I
want to
think
join
so.
on, and they can work that out after, but we should move forward without them.
I think so.
Absolutely.
I think it makes
Good.
sense.
A motion?
I'll move we accept the proposal as presented.
Second?
Good, any further discussion? All in favor? Great, thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Have a good evening.
All right, yeah, we did that.
Okay. Item C, consider revising authorization from the 12/6/21 BOS meeting to expend $4,584 from the Northeast Harbor Mooring Floats Reserve Account 6410100-24681 instead of previously authorized $4,548.
That's $36 more.
Here's a figure transposition.
I move we accept the adjusted amount.
Second.
Good, all in favor? Thank you, John. Presentation and discussion of the revised fire department budget.
Is it in here?
This will certainly be the big topic at town meeting, regardless of how this ends up.
This must be the one.
So we're going through this like we do.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
Can,
that's it.
Yeah.
can I ask about the per diem, the line 31? I remember reading somewhere that you were, like here, that there was that if we were unable to fill, which is highly likely, unable to fill all the positions outlined in your budget proposal, that we would need to rely more on per diem. But is that what this is? So is this something that if we were successful in filling all our positions would not be used?
The per diem line may be used to fill vacations, sick, out training, so we backfill with per diem.
If we don't currently have that, then that's a new line item. Is that?
That is,
Yeah.
yeah. If we can, and we will use that if we can't fill all the positions. So there's two lines that were introduced, well, there's one line that was introduced, that's the per diem. And then the overtime line
Yeah,
has maintained a pretty high number there. That's, we can't fill these positions, full time, we're gonna have to work to look at. Because we need, once we make that move to start doing transport service on or around May 1st, we need staffing in the station to be able to do that.
right, but I guess what I'm getting at is, the 8 positions at 480,000, if they're not filled, that won't be 480,000, and then we'll likely spend more of that overtime and more of the per diem, but if, you know what I mean, I'm sort of.
Yes, yeah, I know what you're saying.
They won't all, they shouldn't all be realized at this full amount, all those 3 items that we just talked about.
There's Jake.
I was just going to mention that in the event where there's, we can't hire all the full-time employees that we'd like to, and we have to subsidize that with the per diem like you're describing, we have room to move money around. What we are beholden to is what's approved at the warrant article level. You guys could absolutely, if it comes to pass that, hey, we're not able to get all the people that we were hoping we were able to, there could be a formal action by the Board of Selectmen to adjust the budget to reclassify some of the amounts previously attributed to full-time employees to subsidize the cost of the per diem line, which would increase.
Well, I guess that it makes me want to ask, why do we need both of them to be fully funded in the current situation? If we're able to move money from line 26 or 27 into the per diem if need be,
I don't think it's fully funded. Yeah,
but, okay.
that's my guess. I think
Now,
it could be-
a question for Mike. I think that's accurate, though, that if we couldn't get what we needed out of the full-time employees, instead of that 400 something thousand number, that would turn out to be, let's say, 200,000, and then we would end up spending $200,000 more in per diem.
But we can move that without a town meeting.
Correct. It wouldn't change the town meeting article approval, because those are going to be approved as bigger buckets, and then you guys have authority to reclassify previously appropriated funds.
And Mike, can you explain the holiday pay situation?
Holiday pay is the same program that the law enforcement uses, where firefighters get paid for, I think it's 12 holidays a year we recognize. So if they work those holidays, then they get time and a half, but they don't get the day off, so they get paid for that as well. I don't think I'm explaining it correctly, but it's where both the police and the firefighters, if they work on a holiday, they don't get that day off anywhere else, so they have to get paid for that, or they get paid for that holiday, but they also get time and a half because they are working on a holiday. Does that make sense?
And we've just got more people now potentially that will be
it went up
working on that.
because of the
Yeah,
increase in
yeah,
staff,
that's right.
right, we have to pay for 12 holidays per employee. So you go from 4 to 12, it's gonna increase your holiday pay. Yeah.
You also approved adding Juneteenth as a holiday, so that's one additional holiday for everyone.
Chief, it does sound still like there's some concern perhaps about having like a three people on rather than 4. I mean, are you it sounds also like there's a chance that might be temporary, so to speak, where it, at least in Somersville, if we have Bar Harbor come on board at some point, do you think, maybe we don't have a crystal ball, but do you think that's how we will get to 4 people on staff over there?
Co-staffing with Bar Harbor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd still like to leave that door open. We're still in negotiation with Bar Harbor. And they still want to do this as well. So that's our goal, is to try to get this, if it is possible, try to get it up and running by next July 1st.
And your preference would be to have the 4 on staff?
Yeah, I would like to
Two of each
collaborate
place.
with Bar Harbor if we can. I think it makes sense in the Somersville area.
Right.
We've been talking about this for a number of years. It's been on for 5 years now. But it enabled us to staff the Somersville station. We've been through this. It'll give us coverage up in the Somersville area, shorter response time. It'll enable them to close their Town Hill station, or they will pull their apparatus out of there. They don't actually own the building. So they'll pull that apparatus out of there, put it down in Bar Harbor, and then we'll co-staff up in Somersville and cover both Bar Harbor and Mountain Strip in that area. Or I shouldn't say all Bar Harbor, but the Town Hill area and that.
And we'll still have our on-call sort of personnel if there is a second situation that comes up while one crew is out.
Yeah, we're gonna have to rely on that. I just was kind of hesitant to go to a full 4 platoon rotation. You know, we're going, what are we, 8 new hires now? And that's probably not gonna be achievable. And so if we can't get 8, trying to go for 12 in this hiring environment, I don't think we're gonna be able to do it.
Can you use per diem for that 4th person?
We can if we have funds, sure, yeah, but I don't think we have enough to put on a 4th person for every 24-hour shift or 356 days a year. We may be able to bump them up in the summertime. This is something that we'll have to gauge as we look at this.
Well, and if we're, I'm just thinking if we did a per diem program, you might not have as much overtime either, theoretically.
Right, yeah. That's That would be the intent. Any open shift position, we try to fill with the on-call people first for the end. And if we can't, then somebody's got to work the overtime, fill that shift.
So, and again, we don't have a crystal ball. So if you had 3 full-time firefighter EMTs on, and you needed that work, say at Soamesville, could you take a per diem person that's just an EMT? And like, is that even in the mix of things, to have the coverage?
Yeah, we've talked about that. You know, if we need somebody in the station, we may go with somebody just firefighter certified or EMT certified, yeah, if we have to, with a preference on EMS. But that's a real possibility. We may even have some full-time people that are EMS licensed only, firefighter certified. If we bring them on, you know, people like that.
I just, you know, it's catch-22, whether you take away money from, you know, like you were really adamant about the 4 people, which, you know, makes sense when you're talking about towns and precious moments and things like that. And then, you know, financially, you came up with an alternative that allowed for 3. And I'm just looking at what's in there for per diem, and I would think the overtime and the number of people that you could use, and I don't know that for sure, that it would almost make sense to try to cover that last person with someone if they're there, and I don't know that they are.
Yeah, unfortunately. The other thing you have to keep in mind is this station here is gonna be uninhabitable for probably 14 months. So for almost a year and a half, we're gonna be running all our operations out of the Somerville station. That's why I can't feel comfortable with going with 3 up there until we get this station up and the people that have been in here. And that's when really we should expand the 4 per shift to here, to Somerville. And by then, if the timeline matches up, we're looking at July 23, August 23. We'll know by then if Bar Harbor's gonna be able to co-staff the Somerville station with us.
Good. Tom?
I'd like to see you guys consider upping that per diem money, just in case the 3 for Mike is not sufficient. Like you just said, sometimes maybe during the summer months. I think we're gonna need 4 on, whether we're all in Soulsville or whether he splits us up or whatever, but I'd like to see you up that way he's got the money to put that 4th person on, a per diem person. And if they're even available, if we're even available, and it could be us on call people, but that ambulance can run nonstop in the summertime. And like Mike said in the last meeting, 3 people really isn't, we're gonna have to rely on that 4th on-call person to hear the page and come in, where if you've got 4 people on, you can immediately roll that 2nd ambulance, or if it's a fire call, you can roll that fire truck and do something.
Yeah, I agree. It's better to have the money available than it's
Then
not
cash
lost.
come out master.
Yeah.
I know we're trying to be cost efficient here with this huge number that we're throwing at you, but that's just my opinion.
You gotta keep people safe.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Chris.
I agree completely with what Tom's saying, and I think this is gonna be a constantly fluid thing, that we have the money, that we might have some excess, and I know that falls a lot on the budgetary, I know in unexpended funds where they're gonna go, and at times, we have to have the capacity to handle this huge volume, and then you really could scale it back, because, as every department sees, but I really think it's important that we don't get caught behind. Now, adding a person from Bar Harbor, you're doubling your coverage area, and you're gonna double your calls. So that isn't really helping out that much. It will at times, but certain times of the year, they're gonna need an extra person up there. And I think it's important that we realize that. And granted, I know the relationship with Bar Harbor is amazing, but when they're busy in Bar Harbor, that one guy's busy. There will be 2 calls, head the island. Everyone knows out of Bar Harbor in that area, that traffic scheme is heavy car accidents. Well, then they're busy in Bar Harbor with the EMT call, then our station's emptied out here, and that leaves Echo Lake Strip. And our Echo Lake Strip, as everyone knows, has a large portion of our accidents there, so now we've diverted everything over here and we have nothing left. So I think for those, and I mean, per calls and geographically, this could all be mapped out and seen where your areas are at times. And I think our funding, and I don't know the details of that, should reflect that.
So what is the magic figure?
I don't know, but I think that's the right idea to have that plan for certain times of the year, to have the least support people from Mount Desert there, and hopefully an additional one.
And I'm talking per diem thing, so that if Bar Harbor thing comes along, you can just do away with that. You know what I mean? That leaves the door open.
Yep.
I'm not saying hire for us to go look for 12 people. We stay with our 8, but if we got some, Mike will have some money to play with to hire the people, those extra people he needs during the busy times of the year. Or if the transition changes in the building plans go, but we decide to go to, he decides to put us in Seal Harbor and Soulsville while this is still going on. One person in one station isn't doing anything, and so that's, I'd like to see him have some more money to play with, that's all.
Yeah, Margaret?
I think it also gives the crew of Northeast Harbor Ambulance a place to fit in, so that they can continue to get the care that they've been wanting to get to, without having to become a firefighter.
Yeah, I would just, I appreciate that comment, because I know we worry if that, and I know that training is as important as the fire training, but I believe there are people currently on that, what is existing now, the Northeast Harbor Ambulance Service, that may not want to be firefighters and may still want to be per diem ambulance attendants for the town of Mount Desert.
Yeah, we've got to make sure that we have a cadre of folks that just are EMTs, because they have very, very heavily used.
And we've got some talent
Yeah.
that we want to hang on to.
That's right. Okay. Chapin.
I know in the past in Bal Harbor, I think in the summer, they would run an extra person because of their raised call volume.
So they do it seasonally.
Yeah.
I think this first year or two, my attitude is, look, it's a learning process for everyone. This is essentially really a brand new department that we're creating here, because it's a different animal. And I agree with the concept. I think we have to give Mike and the entire crew some flexibility there to figure out what's gonna work, and you'd hate to, really, you know what, we do need that, like Chapin was mentioning, maybe there are times in the summer you need a 4th person there, that sort of thing. So it'd be nice to have the money to pay for it. I just want everyone in this room to promise to be willing to stand up at town meeting and say they support it.
And at the warrant committee.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's the challenge. I mean, we have a building project going on, and then we have, a budget that's more than 3 times what it was in 2021.
You had it too good, that's all.
I'm not disagreeing with you, but then
Absolutely.
there are people that don't pay attention on a daily basis that are gonna come out and.
In fact, there are people that are probably going to come to town meeting that this is going to be news to as of.
Yeah. And it's gonna be, so we just need to really have our ducks in a row, no matter what we ask for.
I'm hoping that the Soulsville people are gonna realize, that's what the majority of our voters.
Yeah.
They're gonna realize what good this has done, what we're doing.
I think the process has certainly been pleasing to those people that I've lived near me, that as far as the consideration of that location.
You get fire protection and ambulance.
Absolutely,
Right.
and that means a lot to those of us who live over there.
Chris, yes, Chris, sorry.
I would just like to say, as this increases in our need for personnel goes up, I think there's gonna be a need to really evaluate throughout the town, from the top up, from top down, our budgetary expenses, and look at maybe there's some stuff that we always felt and had that are necessities, but are actually luxuries in other communities, that we might have to, kind of, I'm not saying cut the budget, but transfer some of this things that we feel as necessities are really luxuries into putting it into our personnel impact. And just keeping a broad scope looking forward that way.
You want to close the school?
Don't pay the teachers more.
That's right, or pay as you throw. Yeah.
So, I mean, I was kind of joking, but what is the magic number? What number would make sense for the per diem?
Well,
To give that flexibility.
yeah, I mean, if you want that fourth person on a shift 24/7, you're essentially hiring 4 more people, paying for 4 more people. It's only per diem. So. 240. You're probably talking $200,000.
Yeah.
Because that 62 is approximately 1.
Yeah.
As they put it.
But what's unused could go back, correct?
That's right.
That's right.
Yeah.
We could.
Yep.
This is just fail stop, but we could correct.
Right.
Right, I agree, but I just was trying to keep the budget.
Yes.
Means too, because this has to go before town.
Right.
Absolutely.
And we,
When you start getting
Yep.
increases over 2 million, upping up over $2 million.
Yeah. And you're the one they're gonna be throwing the tomatoes
Well,
at,
right,
so.
and I'm the one that's gonna have to.
We're all gonna be pointing.
Yeah. That's where I'll be
And if
pointing.
it doesn't pass at town meeting, it's gotta pass.
Gotta pass, yeah.
Good point.
Yes.
The
Right.
letters that go out from the Northeast Harbor Ambulance every single year, people have no idea that we are a private entity and that we don't affect our taxes.
No, I know.
So once they realize that, that they're gonna have to start paying for it now, and that's gonna be a big hit.
Yep.
So what if we met, in
Everybody
the-
wants to be safe.
if we met in the middle of that, anyway, that 62 currently and the 248, which is 4 times that. We could keep it under 2 million, but still, it's gonna be a challenge.
and keep the overtime at 40. Do you think that's realistic if we were to? You're still gonna have the option of overtime for some of those people that are not on, that could pick up that per diem, because then they couldn't do it per diem, they would get paid overtime, right?
Right, well, if you're gonna increase the per diem, then obviously we'll try to get per diem people to fill those open shifts as much as we can. I just have to be fair because working 24-hour shifts, you work 2 shifts, you easily go from a 42-hour week to a 70-hour week,
Right.
easily. Which a lot of fire departments in the EMS department are doing now, they're working more than 100 hours a week, that's not getting a short staff.
And training.
And I don't wanna burn out the people that we have.
Right.
By forcing them to cover shifts that we couldn't, fill. So, yeah, there's a balance that we gotta strike there. We'll try to fill these open shifts and force positions to on call pretty much as we can, but, if they only fill, who's gonna be working?
Right.
Yeah. Chapin.
I'd just like to make a comment about that trying to fill per diem. When I was in Presque Isle, they had a per diem department, or per diem personnel, and I was about number 15 on that list. And a handful of times I would be getting that phone call saying, hey, can you pick up a shift? No one else is filling. And then if I said no, then they'd go to the full timers, be like, hey, you gotta fill a shift. So sometimes it is very hard for diem people to fill shifts.
Okay, makes sense.
So I think cutting the overtime might become an issue of no per diem filling either.
Yeah, Tom.
Can I suggest to the board that they throw in that extra $240,000 into that per diem thing? Make it,
Now you're saying.
or 200,000 to make it 260, and that way we can have.
That's what I was gonna say,
Yeah.
you've got 60 in there, or
I
62.
think
I'd
so.
throw 200, I'd throw 200,000 into that.
I think so, and, it's, as we've
So it
already
takes us
said,
over
as
2
you
million.
said, it's
Yeah, it does.
better to have it there than have to rustle around and find it later. Right?
I realize it.
But
I realize what we're trying to do here, but I also
But I would-
realize what we need to do.
I'm willing to do that, but I would reiterate what Matt said and urge all of you to show up at the warrant committee and a town meeting and speak in support, because that's what's gonna make it pass. Because there are gonna be people that arrive there still not knowing that the ambulance was ever not a town.
And you know-
And they didn't never hear about it, and they
That's right.
didn't know, blah, 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 and whoa, you know.
And you know as well as I do that there are a lot of old timers out there like myself, unfortunately, that are gonna remember the good old days when it was pretty cheap, right?
We had at least 100 people in town.
Yeah.
Firefighters.
Yeah.
One thing, I didn't know if we've been provided with the information before, but is there a report available on what the expense of the Northeast Harbor Ambulance Service has been annually over the last few years? So that people are clear on what they haven't been paying for, on dollars and cents?
That'd be a Basil question, I don't know if he's.
Because I think that would be helpful to say, you know, I understand we're building a fire station, where it's not all the fire department, we're taking on a
whole
$600,000 or $800,000 or $500, I don't know. How much that we never used to have to pay for, now we need to.
But you're also getting you're saving a lot of money by the ambulance service giving you equipment.
Right,
Presenting
no, I
you the
That's not a
we
good
need
idea.
all that, we need that information.
Hundreds of thousands
for
of
people.
dollars you're saving by, the ambulance service could say, hey, we're not giving you anything, you guys are on your own, we're gonna just.
Yeah, that's a good, I mean, we're not starting from scratch.
The more we work together with the ambulance service is gonna treat this town good, we can go and fundraise, we can go and do things like that to help this cause, so.
And EMS is gonna have money coming in.
Yeah, that's
Granted,
gonna generate a revenue.
It's not for many years, and might not for, it's touch and go for water service if it generates to pay for itself. But in this, we will, and that's where this fluid comes in, but I just think it's so important that we budget to get it going. And then let that, okay, so this is working, we can, and we get better at the billing and cycling and grants and everything else,
The other thing with the per diem, I mean, it's allowing us to do more transfers, and there's a lot of money in transfers, and it's a huge need, so we need to be able to support our EMS. You can use firefighter, driver, whatever, but to do the inter-facility transfers is something that is a big need for, and it is a money maker.
That's a good
And
point.
the townspeople thing.
I was gonna say, and that's something that is,
Townspeople wanna go in Northeast Harbor,
Yes.
they don't wanna go in Glenburn or,
no,
Howland type.
They wanna know
Or
who's
even
gonna
the
help
other day, Margaret and I were doing a transfer, the next ambulance in was a FEMA ambulance. So we took a local person to Bangor. I don't know where the other person was, but do you wanna ride in the back with two military guys, you know what I mean?
that's
I don't
a
want to go
huge
in an
point.
ambulance. That would be
All right.
wild.
But as far as the
Yeah.
question about the budget, I would imagine that Basil could get you a copy.
It'd be great, I mean, including even the valuation of the assets that are being transferred to the town, all those things help us be able
That's
to,
right.
to make the argument to people that are not hearing what you're telling us. So any information that we can have on saying, well, you don't understand, we're getting, $600,000 worth of equipment that we're not having to buy. We're getting, we're having to take on an expense that we didn't have before, that you didn't know you weren't paying for. Those are all things that'd be helpful.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Good point.
That'd be
Will
great.
people still be able to make donations, like in memory of someone to the Northeast? How does that work when the town takes over?
That's a very good question. It's a question that we have asked our attorney. What is our future? Do we still fundraise? Do we have to change with no longer an ambulance service? Or do we fundraise for someone else who has an ambulance service? We don't really have an answer to that. But that is kind of our goal. There's a lot of members of our service and would still like to do that. But we just don't know how to do it yet.
Money can be given to the town.
Yeah, you'd have to, I mean.
You can give it to the town
Like Mike has described it.
in
there's a-
support of the
There's a
ambulance.
booster sort of, but they have to be established and registered, but,
Yeah, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I believe the attorneys are working on this, and we do have
Yeah.
a couple of solutions.
Yeah.
To do that, I don't want to give out any details, unless Jake wanted to chime in on that at all. But,
Yeah,
we are looking.
Good, that's important.
Yeah, well, I know that we did it for fire, you know.
We did it for fire,
You can do it.
but unfortunately, I warned the ambulance committee because the Mount Desert Fire Rescue Association is hurting right now.
Yeah.
They lost their tax status because they
forgot
just
to
lost
file.
interest. People are all fired up to start this off and be a part of it, but 10, 12 years down the road,
Yeah.
you only have 2 people left. Papers don't get filed, you lose your tax status. Now we're in a position where we're having to send multiple donation checks back because, I shouldn't say we. the
There's a way to do
association,
it right through the
because they can't
town.
accept.
You can give money to it.
Yeah.
So it's a good idea, but you have to be prepared for the long haul.
Yeah.
People don't want to maintain that organization and run it for 10, 12 years, 15
Yeah.
years, whatever.
So if there's a way to get that through the town, streamline that, that'd
I
be
think
great.
there is.
Yeah.
But anyway, they're working on it, so we don't need to
Yep.
figure that out. Okay, so we're all set? We're gonna
Not
add-
really, because I've got to have some numbers, I've got to put
I
together
think
a warrant article.
I think the consensus is that we're gonna put another 200,000 in
So it's
there.
gonna be 262, is it?
I
Under
believe-
per diem.
I believe that was
Per
your
diem.
suggestion, yeah.
Okay, because I have to have that ready, because I gotta put warrant article numbers together, 262.
That puts it over 2 million.
It
I
does.
mean, I don't know if you want to keep it down, just go to
What's the
go to
difference?
248 for, well, it matters.
It's like 1995
Yes, it
versus
does, it
$20.
matters,
Doesn't matter
it
when your
matters,
numbers are
it
that high,
matters,
right.
it matters.
But I think it
I
is
would suggest we go to 4 times the 62, go to 248.
I think
And
it's gonna
that
be
would still
important to
keep it
point
below.
out to voters that, in a way, that's just sort of an up to amount. Because we fund it at that level doesn't mean we're actually gonna
They're
spend
not
that
gonna
level.
understand that.
Well,
gonna-
I'm gonna say it anyway.
Yeah, I agree with you, I mean, you're right, but.
Okay, I've got 2 numbers, I have 248 and I have 262, and I'm still not sure which one I'm supposed to enter.
I think Jeff makes a good point, let's stick with that.
I agree.
4 times 62 is 248, so you're adding another 186,
Yeah, that way.
and that way it stays under.
All right.
Then
now-
Barely,
now-
barely, but
But
it's
it
still
does-
under. It,
The bottom line, people look at.
Yeah.
So, Mike, thank you. That report
Thank you,
was
Mike.
so good
Thanks,
and
Thanks, guys,
I
for
mean,
coming in.
we're.
Yeah, thanks, Tom.
All right.
well, that was fun.
Just a little more money.
Okay, new business. Consider adding Acadia Fire Football Club to a third-party request list. That's an unfortunate place to be.
I don't know. Is there youth soccer? Aren't we already funding youth soccer through the
There's-
neighborhood house?
Recreational soccer amongst, like it always used to be Harbor House.
And I
Neighborhood
know
House,
that
the
the
one.
Acadia Youth Sports has taken over management of
Baseball and
baseball
basketball.
and basketball, but those are still.
Right, we still do like a rec basketball as well. My opinion is like, hey, they can ask, but they need to fill out the same form that everyone else
Yeah.
fills out, and for a first time ask, that's a.
They wanted
substantial amount.
$12,000 and there's 12 kids in the town that currently.
Or I think it's 19 and there's 19.
19, yeah,
kids,
okay, right.
19.
Yeah,
Well, they don't, this isn't how they apply.
No, it's not.
No,
really.
they,
Right.
can I say, they sent the letter, and when I looked at what their ask was, I was like, this is so far out of,
No way.
so far out of what everybody else is doing, that I talked to Derlin, and he suggested that we just bring it to you to see if we even want to include them, because they've never asked us for money before. And the first time out, they were like out of the ballpark, you know. So, so it's up to you whether you want me to even send them the application.
Yeah, my personal feeling is no, we gotta draw the line.
Seconded.
We got an awful lot of applications already.
Yeah.
I agree. I think we do fund youth sports, and
Yeah.
that's what we need to focus on.
Those were the
So
ones
do
that
you,
I
do you
had.
need a motion and a vote on that? Or
Oh,
is that-
just give us just guidance.
Yeah, the guidance is no.
See, you're already saving money, Tyson.
Yeah, see, there you go.
It's a bad, as I said to Kyle, it's a bad place to be on the agenda, you know?
We already did B and C, right?
Did the, we did C, yeah.
We don't need to move anything for C, right?
Nope.
We already
No.
reviewed it. and we're
So
good to
now we're on
go.
the warrants?
Other business, anybody have any other business?
I hope not.
Okay, treasurer's warrants, okay, town invoices, AP 2241 in the amount of $568,617.35.
Move approval and signature?
Second,
All in favor? State fees and payroll benefits, AP 2239, AP 2240, and PR 2215 in the amount of $238,060.10.
Move approval and signature?
second,
All in favor?
What extension?
School invoices 8 and 14 in the amount of $134,181.78.
Move acknowledgement?
Second?
All in favor? Great. Motion to adjourn.
so moved.
All in favor?
Second.
Second.
Great.
Third, fourth, fifth.
So